They say you can't take it with you. But what if they wouldn't let you leave it behind either? What if your credit score didn't just determine your interest rate, but exactly how long your memory was allowed to survive? What if the moment your heart stopped beating, the very second the monitor flatlined, your bank account did the exact same thing? They say you can't take it with you. We've always known that. But until the act passed, you could at least leave it behind. You could hand down the house with the leaky roof, the rusty Ford F-150, the few $1,000 you stuffed in a mattress. But now, the moment you die, you cash out. Zero balance. Total reset. Welcome to Divergence Point. Settle in, folks. It's midnight somewhere, maybe everywhere. I don't know where you're tuned in from tonight. Maybe you're cruising down a dark stretch of I-80 in Nebraska, watching the cornfields blur into a black ocean. Maybe you're in a high-rise in Chicago, listening to the wind try to push the glass in, staring at a spreadsheet you haven't updated in 3 hours. Or maybe you're just lying in bed, staring at that popcorn ceiling, trying to figure out if you saved enough this month to justify that drive-through coffee you bought this morning. Wherever you are, you're safe here. It's just us, just the static and the truth. Tonight, we're talking about the legacy ban. The day the government decided that the American dream needed a reboot, a hard reset. No more dynastic wealth, no more trust fund babies, no more inheriting grandma's split-level ranch in the suburbs. They called it the meritocracy mandate, the ultimate equalizer. Every child starts at 0. Every corpse ends at 0. Sounds fair on paper, doesn't it? A playing field so level it looks like a parking lot. But you and I know how this works. We know that in America, fair is usually just a marketing slogan for a new kind of foreclosure. Let's visualize it. You're standing in a hospital room. Use the theater of the mind here. The air smells like antiseptic and burnt coffee. It's 3 a.m. The machine next to the bed gives that long, high-pitched whine. Beep. Your father just passed. It's a heavy moment. The grief hits you in the chest, hot and sharp. You reach for his hand, cold and papery. But before you can even wipe the first tear from your cheek, you hear a vibration in your pocket, then another. Then the phone on the bedside table lights up. It's not condolences. It's the notifications. Ping. Bank of America. Account closure process initiated. Ping. The county assessor. Property reclamation notice number 44B. Ping. The IRS. Final audit. Pending immediate liquidation. In the old days, you had months to sort through the paperwork. You had the funeral. You had the reading of the will. Now, the algorithm is faster than the undertaker. Before the doctor even calls the time of death, the state's AI has already cross-referenced the heartbeat monitor with the Social Security Administration. The assets are frozen. Then they are dissolved. You walk out of that hospital into the parking lot under the buzzing sodium lights. You get into your dad's car, the 2021 Chevy Silverado he loved more than his own knees. You put the key in the ignition. It turns over. The engine rumbles, that familiar comfort and vibration. But the dashboard screen flashes red.
unauthorized user, asset reclaimed by federal motor pool, vehicle disabled. The engine cuts, just like that. You're sitting in a dead truck in a dark parking lot, gripping a steering wheel that doesn't belong to you anymore. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the pot. This is the psychological horror of the mundane, folks. It's not a monster in the closet. It's the tow truck pulling up while you're still grieving. It's the realization that your family history isn't something you own. It was just a long-term rental. See, the logic was sound, technically. The economists in their ivory towers, the guys with the soft hands and the expensive watches, they said this would save the economy. They said if people couldn't hoard wealth for the next generation, they'd spend it now. It would be the ultimate stimulus package. Use it or lose it, applied to an entire lifetime. And boy, did we spend. We'll get to the spending later. The frantic, manic consumption of a population trying to burn through a lifetime of savings before the heart attack hits. But first, think about the immediate aftermath. You're back at your parents' house, the house you grew up in. The height chart penciled on the door frame in the kitchen. The stubborn stain on the living room carpet where you dropped a grape juice box in 1998. You have 48 hours to vacate. That's the grace period. You're packing boxes, but you're not packing the silver. You can't take the jewelry. You can't take the antique clock on the mantle. Those are tangible assets. They have to be appraised and auctioned off. Proceeds going to the National Infrastructure Fund. You can take the photos. You can take the clothes, as long as they aren't designer. You can take the worthless, sentimental junk. You're standing there, holding a ceramic mug that says "World's Best Dad," and realizing that's your entire inheritance. A piece of glazed clay worth 50 cents at a garage sale. And the cynicism sets in. You realize that while you're being stripped of your family's modest accumulation, the paid-off mortgage, the savings account, the massive corporations figured this out years ago. You can't inherit money, but you can inherit a corporation. The loopholes. God, we love a loophole, don't we? The billionaires didn't panic. They just turned their children into executive consultants of family LLCs that own everything but the air they breathe. But you, the guy who worked 40 years at the plant in Dayton, you didn't incorporate. You didn't have a team of lawyers on retainer. So, you lose the house. You stand on the porch, looking out at the street. The neighbors are watching. They know. They're doing the math in their heads, wondering how many days they have left on their own clocks. Wondering if they should just burn it all down rather than let the government auction it off to a BlackRock subsidiary. That's the vibe, folks. A nation of people realizing they are temporary guests in their own lives. Hell of a thing, isn't it? To work your fingers to the bone just to realize you're simply fattening the goose for someone else's dinner. But here is where it gets interesting. Here is where the American spirit, that stubborn, defiant, slightly illegal grit, kicks in. Because if there is one thing we hate more than death, it's taxes. And when you make death 100% taxable, you create a black market for immortality. You thought you knew how to hustle? You haven't seen
anything yet. Let's take a break. Listen to the rain for a second. Drink your beer. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about the underground economy of gifting and why buying a used toaster on Craigslist became a federal crime. They told us it was about fairness. They said it was about keeping the economy moving, greasing the wheels of commerce with the accumulated wealth of the silent generation. But what they really did was turn every Sunday dinner into a potential RICO case. They turned compassion into contraband. You're smart. I know you are. You're listening to this show, which means you're already looking for the cracks in the wall. You're thinking, okay, Midnight, if I can't leave the money when I die, I'll just give it all away while I'm alive. A classic American instinct. Beat the system, outsmart the suit. But you really think the algorithm didn't see you coming? Let's talk about the look back. In the old days, if you needed nursing home care, the government looked back 5 years into your finances. If you gave away a house or a car, they penalized you. Now, the legacy ban utilizes the dynamic life audit. It's an AI that predicts your date of death based on your medical records, your grocery purchases, and your stress levels. And once you enter the red zone, that statistical window where your mortality probability spikes, your assets are frozen in place. You can spend, sure. You can buy services, but you cannot transfer. Attempting to give your daughter a down payment for a condo when you have stage 3 anything is now a Class C felony. They call it pre-mortem asset dumping. So, naturally, we became a nation of smugglers. But we aren't smuggling heroin or weapons-grade plutonium. We're smuggling value. We're smuggling the future. Imagine the scene. It's a Tuesday afternoon in a suburban cul-de-sac. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and a grandmother is nervously sweating through her floral blouse. She's sitting on a park bench, clutching a handbag that weighs 15 pounds. She's not meeting a drug dealer. She's meeting her grandson.
He pulls up in a beat-up sedan. He looks around. He's scanning the rooftops for the buzz of a neighborhood compliance drone. He checks his phone to make sure his GPS is off. He sits next to her. "Did you bring it?" he whispers. She nods. She slides a Tupperware container across the bench. Inside, underneath a layer of lukewarm lasagna, is a watertight bag filled with gold Krugerrands she bought for cash in 1995. This is the new criminal underworld. It's not dark alleys. It's park benches and potlucks. It's the desperate, frantic attempt to pass something, anything, to the next generation before the state sucks it back into the void. But the paranoia? That's the real kicker. Because cash is suspicious. If you pull out 10 grand in 20s, the bank flags you. If you buy gold, you're on a watch list. So people get creative. And when people get creative, things get weird. We started seeing the rise of the value mule. You want to give your kid an inheritance? You don't give them a check. You buy a vintage Rolex, wear it for 6 months so it registers as personal effects, and then accidentally lose it in their apartment. But then the insurance adjusters got involved.
They started cross-referencing loss claims with beneficiary addresses. The walls are closing in. You can feel it, right? The tightness in your chest. The realization that every transaction you make is being weighed against your life expectancy. And the neighbors? Forget about the friendly wave across the fence. The reward program destroyed that. If you report a neighbor for asset dumping, you get a 5% finder's fee from the reclaimed value. 5% of a paid-off house is a lot of money when you're living paycheck to paycheck. So now, everyone is watching everyone. You see a brand new 85-inch TV box in your neighbor's recycling bin? You wonder if he bought it or if his dying father bought it for him. You hover your finger over the report button on the Citizen app? You need that 5% because your own rent just went up. This is how they get us. They turn the middle class against itself, turning us all into deputized auditors for the state. But the hustle never dies. It just mutates. The most visceral reality of this new world is the service economy loophole. You can't give money, but you can pay for services. So suddenly, every 20-year-old in America is a consultant. You want to give your son $50,000? You don't hand him cash. You hire his landscaping LLC to mow your lawn once for 50 grand. Of course, the IRS caught on to that quick. They implemented fair market value caps. Now, if you pay your kid more than $50 for a lawn job, the algorithm flags it as a disguised gift. The audit is automatic. The freeze is immediate.
So now, you have to fake it better. You have to create a paper trail of legitimate work that never happened. Families are spending their final precious months together, not reminiscing, not looking at old photo albums, but forging invoices, creating fake business plans, staging photos of work being done. Picture a dying father in a hospice bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, holding an iPad with a shaking hand. He's not saying goodbye. He's digitally signing a falsified contract stating that his daughter provided executive life coaching services for the last 6 months, just so he can legally transfer the contents of his checking account to her before the flatline. It's grotesque. It's humiliating. It forces you to monetize your love. You can't just be a father. You have to be an employer. Your child can't just be a son. He has to be a vendor. And if you screw it up, if you miss a decimal point or the timestamp doesn't match, the system locks it all down. The clawback is brutal. They don't just take the money you tried to transfer. They take the fines out of the recipient's account. They bankrupt your child for the crime of trying to save them. That's the terror I'm talking about tonight. The fear that in your attempt to leave a safety net, you're actually handing them an anchor. You're lying in the dark, wondering if that gift you hid in the attic is going to save your family or send them to federal prison. You're asking yourself the question that keeps this country awake at night. How much is my legacy worth if it destroys the people I'm trying to save? We're all running numbers in our sleep now. We're all accountants of our own demise. And out there, in the server farms humming in the cold desert night, The legacy ban algorithm is learning. It's getting smarter. It knows you bought that extra carton of cigarettes. It knows your blood pressure is up. It's calculating the exact nanosecond it can come to collect. But there's one place they haven't figured out how to tax yet. One commodity that's still untraceable if you have the guts to deal in it. Let's talk about the barter underground. Let's talk about what happens when money becomes toxic and we go back to trading favors, blood, and time. When the dollar becomes a tracking device, you stop using it to store your life. That's just basic survival mechanics. We figured out pretty quickly that digital currency is for the living. It's for the coffee, the toll booth, the streaming subscription that keeps you sedated. But for the dead? For the legacy you want to leave behind? You need something heavy. Something that doesn't have an IP address. Welcome to the era of heavy metal. And I don't mean the music. I'm talking about the new gold standard. But we aren't trading in gold bars like Bond villains. That's too obvious. The asset forfeiture drones have scanners that can detect gold density through 3 feet of concrete. No, we went back to the American basics. We went to the hardware store.
You want to know what the most stable currency in America is right now? It isn't Bitcoin. It isn't the euro. It's high-carbon steel. It's Snap-on tools. It's boxes of unlisted ammunition. It's copper wire. It's 50-gallon drums of shelf-stable ethanol. We retreated from the cloud and entrenched ourselves in the physical. This is where the American obsession with stuff stopped being a neurosis and started being a strategy. But let me tell you, friend, living inside a strategy is a claustrophobic nightmare. Imagine your living room. Remove the aesthetic. Remove the feng shui. Now fill every inch of negative space with value. Not money, value. Your coffee table isn't a table anymore. It's a stack of plyboard covering 4 engine blocks you plan to leave to your youngest son. That ottoman? It's hollowed out and filled with vacuum-sealed pouches of heirloom seeds. The walls aren't insulated with pink fiberglass. They're lined with copper piping, packed tight, row after row, hidden behind the drywall. You are literally living inside your bank account, and it is heavy. This is the visceral reality no one warned us about. The sheer logistical horror of weight. The floor joists in American suburbs weren't designed to hold the weight of a life savings when that savings is converted into lead and steel. You walk across your bedroom floor and you hear the wood groan. You feel the house settling, sinking into the earth under the burden of your love for your children. We've had to become structural engineers just to save for retirement. You go to sleep praying the foundation doesn't crack, because if it does, you can't call a contractor. A contractor sees the hoard, and under the see something, say something clause of the Legacy Act, he's obligated to report unusual asset density. So you live in a tilting house, a sinking ship on a manicured lawn. And the trade, the actual handover, that's where the tension snaps you in half. You can't just write a check for your daughter's college tuition anymore.
You have to make the drop. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're in your garage. You're not loading suitcases of cash. You're loading a pallet of drill bits and catalytic converters into the back of a rental van. The suspension bottoms out. The tires bulge. You're sweating, not because of the exertion, but because of the noise. Clank, thud, grind. Every sound is a siren. You drive 3 towns over to meet the bursar. That's what we call them now. The underground fences who convert goods into tuition credits or down payments. You meet in an abandoned outlet mall parking lot. The exchange is brutal and fast. You aren't shaking hands, you're transferring tonnage. You watch your life's work, the literal weight of your labor, get forklifted into a dark truck. And you pray. You pray the bursar doesn't get pulled over. You pray the value doesn't get seized. Because if it does, it's gone. No insurance, no FDIC, just a black hole.
But the psychological toll isn't just the fear of getting caught. It's what this does to your mind. It turns you into a dragon sleeping on a pile of garbage. You stop seeing objects as things to use. You start seeing everything as a unit of trade. You look at a toaster and think, that's 3 days of groceries for my wife after I'm gone. You look at a pristine set of socket wrenches and think, that's 1 month's rent. You stop living in your home and start managing a warehouse. And the smells. God, the smells. A house full of assets smells like machine oil, ozone, dust, and decay. It smells like desperation. Then there's the paranoia of the durable goods tax. The government isn't stupid. They saw the shift. They saw the spike in sales of non-perishables. So they started rationing matter itself. You buy too many nails? Flagged. You buy too much lumber without a permit? Audit. So we have to smudge the inventory. We buy things we don't need just to throw off the algorithm. You buy a broken jet ski just to hide the fact that you're stockpiling antibiotic cream in the hull. You become a collector of junk to hide the jewels. And the saddest part? The distrust it breathes within the family. You can't tell your kids where the hoard is. Not exactly. Kids talk. Kids post on social media. One TikTok video with a background glimpse of a stack of unauthorized solar panels, and the feds are knocking. So you create treasure maps, coded ledgers. You leave instructions that make no sense to the living. When I die, look under the floorboards in the guest room, but only the 3rd plank from the left. You turn your death into a scavenger hunt. You're creating a burden for them, even as you try to liberate them. You're leaving them a physical mess that they have to clean, sort, and fence, all while dodging the authorities. You aren't leaving them a nest egg, you're leaving them a criminal conspiracy. But you do it. You do it because the alternative is letting the system win. You do it because looking at that stack of rusty rebar in your basement gives you the only sense of control you have left. You touch the cold metal and tell yourself, they can't delete this. They can't format this hard drive. But they can crush it, and they're building the crushers right now. Get ready, because the next phase isn't about what you own. It's about who you know. When the physical world gets locked down,
The only currency left is influence, and that market is bloodier than anything we've seen yet. We're about to walk into the unspoken economy of the favor. And trust me, the interest rates there, they don't cost money. They cost pieces of your soul. The steel in the basement was heavy, wasn't it? It threatened to crack the foundation. But there is something heavier than lead, heavier than gold, heavier than a garage full of engine blocks. There is a weight that doesn't register on a scale, but it can crush a human ribcage just the same. I'm talking about obligation. When the government successfully tagged every dollar, and when the drones started sniffing out the physical hoards, the smart money didn't vanish. It just changed state. It evaporated into the air between us. It became the invisible, suffocating web of the favor. If you can't leave your children a fortune, you have to leave them a network. You have to leave them a pathway. So, the American dream shifted from accumulating capital to accumulating leverage. We stopped banking money and started banking people. Welcome to the most exhausting cocktail party in human history. You know the feeling. You're at a neighborhood barbecue or a meaningless mixer at the local chamber of commerce. In the old world, you went to these things to eat a slider and maybe complain about the weather. Now, these events are life and death trading floors. Look around the room. Really look. No one is smiling with their eyes. Everyone is scanning. They are assessing the influence cap of every person holding a plastic cup. That guy over there near the cooler, he's not just a regional manager for a logistics firm. He is a potential lifeline. He has the authority to hire. And if he hires, he can authorize a salary. And if he authorizes a salary, that is a wealth transfer mechanism. So, you don't just talk to him, you court him. You aren't making friends, you are acquiring an asset. This is the commodification of the handshake. We have reverted to a feudal system, but instead of lords and vassals, it's sponsors and legacy hires. The horror here isn't the government watching you. It's the absolute corruption of human intimacy. You find yourself wondering, late at night, if your best friend actually likes you, or if he's just investing in your potential to get his daughter an internship in 10 years. Does he laugh at your jokes because they're funny? Or is he paying premiums on an insurance policy? And you're doing it too. You're staring at your own friends and mentally calculating their return on investment. The new inheritance is the vouch. That's the golden ticket. Since you can't leave cash, you spend your entire career building up a stockpile of professional goodwill, calling in every marker, every overtime shift you ever worked, every mistake you covered up for a boss. You save it all for the deathbed ask. The deathbed ask. It's the new reading of the will. Picture a dying man in an executive office. He's not signing checks. He's making calls. He's burning through 40 years of social capital in a single hour. He's calling the guy he saved from a scandal in '98. He's calling the woman whose promotion he fast-tracked in '05. "I'm cashing out," he tells them. "Take care of my boy. Give him a title. Give him a salary that the audit won't flag. Do this and we're square." He dies knowing that his son is taken care of not by a trust fund, but by a web of coerced nepotism.
But here is where the intensity ramps up. Here is where the visceral reality of this system breaks you. Because debt, social debt, is volatile. What happens when the person holding your markers dies before you do? What happens when the guy you spent 10 years smoozing gets fired or canceled or audited? Your inheritance for your kids evaporates instantly. You bet on the wrong horse. You invested your life's energy into a human being who depreciated to zero. So the anxiety is constant. You have to manage your network like a portfolio. You have to hedge. You have to diversify. You need a guy in sanitation, a girl in tech, a contact in the medical supply chain. You have to be nice to everyone, not because you are kind, but because you are terrified. And the pressure on the children? It's unfathomable. In the old days, a trust fund baby could be a screw-up. They could fail and still have a cushion. Not anymore. If your inheritance is a job, you have to be able to keep the job, or at least you have to be tolerable enough not to get fired immediately. Parents are drilling their kids like soldiers, not in math or reading, but in charm, in conflict resolution, in the art of being personable. We are raising a generation of sociopathic salesmen because being unlikable is now a poverty sentence. If you are awkward, if you are shy, if you are difficult, you are uninsurable. You are unhirable. You are dead weight. We see the rise of the shadow resume. It's not about your grades. It's a dossier of who your parents did favors for. Oh, your dad is the one who fixed the zoning board issue for Amazon? You're hired. Executive Vice President of Paperclips. Starting salary, $200,000. It's legalized laundering, washing money through a W-2 form. But the dark underbelly of the favor economy is the leverage. Because sometimes the people who can help you don't want a favor in return. They want ownership. You want your daughter to get into that protected housing zone? You want your son to get that consultant gig that pays the bills? Fine, the sponsor will do it. But now, you belong to the sponsor. They own your vote. They own your silence. They own your morality. You see good men doing terrible things, not for money, but to secure a vouch for their grandkids. You see neighbors turning a blind eye to crimes because the perpetrator
is the only one who can sign off on a crucial recommendation letter. We have become a nation of accomplices, held hostage by the need to secure a future for our bloodline. The moral injury is profound. You look in the mirror and you see a broker of flesh. You realized you traded your integrity for your child's security. And the worst part? You'd do it again. You'd burn the world down if it meant your kid didn't have to start at zero.
The system thought banning inheritance would create a meritocracy. Instead, it created a caste system made of ironclad handshakes and whispered blackmail. It turned the concept of community into a cartel. And as you lie there counting the ceiling tiles, thinking about who owes you what, you realize the ultimate irony. You are working harder to network than you ever worked at your actual job. You are exhausted. Your smile muscles are twitching from the strain. But you can't stop. Because out there, in the corporate wasteland, there are wolves. And the only thing that keeps the wolves away is the pack. Even if you hate the pack, even if the pack is eating you alive from the inside out. But wait, there's a whisper on the wind, a rumor circulating in the break rooms and the encrypted message boards. Some people are opting out of the game entirely. They aren't hoarding metal, and they aren't trading favors. They're doing something much more dangerous. They're betting on the collapse. Let's talk about the zero-day preppers. The ones who are intentionally spending every dime, burning every bridge, and teaching their kids how to hunt in the ruins of the suburbs. Because they know something we don't. They know the favor economy is a bubble, and they are sharpening their knives for when it pops. Have you noticed the potholes? Not just on the highway, but in the driveway next door. Have you noticed that the siding on the Smith's house has been hanging loose for 6 months, flapping in the wind like a dead flag? Have you noticed that despite the neglect, there is a brand new $90,000 luxury SUV parked on the cracked concrete? This is the aesthetic of the end times. This is the visual language of a society that has stopped believing in tomorrow. We used to be a nation of builders. We were obsessed with equity. We added sunrooms, we finished basements, we sealed driveways. We did this because we were preparing the nest for the hatchlings. We were maximizing the asset for the handover. But when you sever the link between generations, when you tell a man that the castle he built becomes public property the moment he draws his last breath, you don't get a nation of philanthropists. You get a nation of tenants. And tenants, as any landlord will tell you, treat the property very differently than owners. Welcome to the era of terminal depreciation. The logic is cold and flawless. If the state claims the asset at the time of death, then the optimal strategy
is to ensure the asset is worth absolutely nothing at that precise moment. It is a game of chicken with the reaper. The goal is to slide into the grave with a bank account of 0 and a house that collapses 5 minutes after the funeral.
Why replace the roof? That's a 30-year investment. You're 65. The math doesn't work. So you let it leak. You put a bucket in the attic. You let the water rot the beams. You let the black mold creep behind the drywall. It's not your problem. It's the state's problem. It's the Department of Housing's mold. We are watching the rapid, intentional decay of the American suburb. It is a slow-motion riot of neglect. And the money that would have gone into that roof, it's not being saved. It's being incinerated. We are witnessing the most manic, desperate consumption boom in human history. It is the terminal party. Walk into a high-end steakhouse on a Tuesday night. It is packed. Gray-haired men and women are drinking $400 bottles of Cabernet. They are eating Wagyu beef. They are laughing too loud. Their eyes are wide and glassy. They are eating their children's inheritance. Literally. They are chewing it, swallowing it, and flushing it away. It is grotesque. It is a frenzy of now. But look closer at the table. Look at the resentment simmering in the eyes of the younger people sitting with them, the adult children. They are watching their parents order another bottle, knowing that every sip is a semester of tuition vanishing. Every desert is a down. Why replace the roof? That's a 30-year investment. You're 65. The math doesn't work. So you let it leak. You put a bucket in the attic. You let the water rot the beams. You let the black mold creep behind the drywall. It's not your problem. It's the state's problem. It's the Department of Housing's mold. We are watching the rapid, intentional decay of the American suburb. It is a slow-motion riot of neglect. And the money that would have gone into that roof, it's not being saved. It's being incinerated. We are witnessing the most manic, desperate consumption boom in human history. It is the terminal party. Walk into a high-end steakhouse on a Tuesday night. It is packed. Gray-haired men and women are drinking $400 bottles of Cabernet. They are eating Wagyu beef. They are laughing too loud. Their eyes are wide and glassy. They are eating their children's inheritance, literally. They are chewing it, swallowing it, and flushing it away. It is grotesque. It is a frenzy of now. But look closer at the table. Look at the resentment simmering in the eyes of the younger people sitting with them, the adult children. They are watching their parents order another bottle, knowing that every sip is a semester of tuition vanishing. Every dessert is a down payment dissolving. The intergenerational contract has been breached. The parents feel entitled to spend what they earned because they can't pass it on. The children feel cheated because they are watching their safety net being metabolized into cholesterol and hangovers. And then there are the burners. These are the ones who aren't just spending, they are actively destroying. They are the zero-day preppers who have decided that if they can't leave their kids money, they will leave them something darker,
A lesson in chaos. If the system is rigged to seize everything, the burner parent teaches the child that ownership is a trap. They stop sending the kids to piano lessons or coding camps. Why bother? Those are skills for a stable society where you climb a ladder. The ladder is gone. So, you see fathers in the backyard not playing catch, but teaching their sons how to bypass the electric meter. You see mothers teaching their daughters how to synthesize antibiotics from fish tank cleaners. They are preparing their children for the collapse that their own spending is accelerating. "I can't leave you the house," the father says, staring at the peeling paint. "But I can teach you how to strip the copper out of the walls before the eviction squad shows up. I can teach you how to live in the wreckage." This is the psychological horror of the shift. We have moved from preservation to extraction. We are strip mining our own lives.
You see it in the cars. People stop changing the oil. They stop rotating the tires. They drive the vehicle until the engine seizes. Then they abandon it on the side of the highway and lease a new one. The landscape is littering with the carcasses of machines that were treated like disposable razors. And the government? The state is terrified. They thought they were inheriting a gold mine. They thought the legacy ban would transfer trillions of dollars of pristine real estate and assets into the public trust. Instead, they are inheriting a junkyard. Every day, thousands of Americans die, and the state keys into their properties only to find husks. Houses with no wiring, cars with no engines, bank accounts with a balance of 14 cents. The national wealth transfer is a myth. It's a transfer of liability. The state is becoming the world's largest owner of condemned buildings and toxic debt. But the most terrifying part isn't the rotting wood or the empty accounts. It's the attitude. It's the spiritual rot. When you stop caring about what you leave behind, you stop caring about the world itself. You stop recycling. You stop voting for school bonds. You stop volunteering. You become a singularity of selfishness. After me, the flood. You are standing on your porch, beer in hand, watching the neighbors dismantle their deck for firewood because it's a chilly night and they don't want to pay for heat. The smoke smells like treated lumber and arsenic. It's poison, but it's warm. And for tonight, that's all that matters. This is the world we built. A world where the future is an enemy because it's a place we aren't allowed to exist in. So we burn the present to stay warm. But here's the kicker, folks. Here's the twist that keeps me up at night. While the middle class burns their assets in a fit of nihilistic rage, and the poor scramble for scraps, someone is buying the ashes. Someone is sweeping up the debris. Because when a house becomes worthless, when a neighborhood rots from the inside out, the land is still there. And there are entities waiting in the shadows, corporate monoliths that don't die, that don't have expiration dates, waiting to buy the scorched earth for pennies on the dollar. We are destroying our own footprint, clearing the way for the giants. And they are hungry. Let me tell you about the corporate adoption program.
Let me tell you about what happens when a company offers to become your legal heir. We used to say that corporations are people. It was a legal fiction, a way to let a business sign a contract or get sued. But we forgot the most important difference between a corporation and a person. A corporation doesn't have a lifespan. A corporation doesn't get cancer. A corporation doesn't have a heartbeat that stops at 3 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. So, in a world where death triggers a 100% tax rate, the immortal person became the only safe harbor for wealth. Welcome to the era of the corporate ward.
You're sitting at your kitchen table. The light is dim because you're saving on electricity. Across from you sits a representative. He's not from the government. He's from a conglomerate. Maybe it's a logistics giant. Maybe a tech monolith. Maybe a pharmaceutical empire. He's wearing a suit that costs more than your car. He's smiling, but his eyes are scanning the room, assessing the structural integrity of your life. He pushes a document across the scratched formica. It's thick, it's heavy. At the top, in elegant serif font, it reads, "The Legacy Preservation and Talent Acquisition Agreement." They don't call it slavery. They call it sponsorship. Here is the deal. Since you cannot legally leave your assets to your biological child, you leave them to the corporation. You sign over the deed to your house, your 401k, your savings, your physical hoard of copper wire, everything. In exchange, the corporation agrees to adopt your child into their closed ecosystem. They get a guaranteed job. They get housing in the corporate district. They get health care. They get access to the company store. Your wealth isn't taxed because it technically never changed hands between people. It was absorbed by an entity that never dies. Your child simply becomes a beneficiary of the trust, contingent on their continued employment and loyalty. You are selling your child to save them. Think about the psychological weight of that signature. You are holding the pen. Your hand is shaking. You look at your kid playing video games in the next room, oblivious. You are about to sign their freedom away to ensure they don't starve. You are trading their liberty for their liquidity. And once you sign, the transformation is immediate. The visceral reality of the company child is chilling. It starts with the clothes. Your kid comes home from school one day and they aren't wearing jeans and a t-shirt. They are wearing the uniform. It's high quality, breathable fabric, tailored perfectly. But the logo is there, stitched over the heart, a subtle branding, a reminder of who owns the beat underneath. They don't go to public school anymore. Public schools are underfunded holding pens for the unsponsored. No, your kid goes to the academy. The curriculum is optimized. They don't learn history or art or philosophy. They learn supply chain management. They learn coding for proprietary systems. They learn compliance. They are being engineered. They are being purpose-built to fit into a slot in the machine that you paid for them to enter. And you
You become a spectator in your own family. You're still the parent, technically. You still cook dinner, but you aren't the provider anymore. The corporation is the provider. If your kid needs braces, you don't call the dentist. You submit a ticket to human resources. If your kid wants a bike, you check the allowance allocation in the contract. You start to notice a shift in how your child looks at you. They don't look at you with respect or dependence. They look at you with pity. You are the relic. You are the chaotic, mortal past. The corporation is the shiny, orderly future. You see the indoctrination taking root. They start speaking in corporate speak at the dinner table. They talk about efficiencies and pain points when discussing their chores. But the horror, the true midnight terror, comes when you read the fine print of the performance clause. Because this inheritance isn't unconditional. Your child has to earn their keep. The assets you signed over are held in escrow, released in trickles as bonuses for hitting KPIs. If your son's grades drop, the stipend is cut. If your daughter gets caught with weed, the housing voucher is revoked. If they decide they want to be a poet instead of a data analyst, the contract is voided. The corporation keeps the assets, and your child is ejected onto the street, naked and destitute. So you become the enforcer. You become the drill sergeant. You find yourself screaming at your 10-year-old over a B- in math, not because you care about math, but because a C+ triggers a breach of contract. You are terrified that your child will be terminated. And in this world, termination means exactly what it sounds like: the end of their life as a viable economic unit. We are seeing the rise of corporate anxiety in toddlers. 5-year-olds who have panic attacks because they colored outside the lines, because they know on some primal level that they are on a performance improvement plan. And what about the ones who make it? The success stories. You see them in the dedicated lanes on the highway, the clean, hermetically sealed buses shuffling them from the corporate dorms to the office towers. They look healthy. They look safe. But they look vacant. They have no ambition because their path was paved in concrete before they hit puberty. They are safe, but they are property. The American dream used to be about autonomy. Be your own boss. Now, the ultimate luxury is to be owned. To be a line item on a balance sheet so big it can't fail. And the cynic in you, the voice in the back of your head that sounds like me, whispers the darkest truth of all. The corporations planned this. They lobbied for the legacy ban. They knew that if they cut off the flow of generational wealth, they could buy the next generation of labor for the price of a secure room and a hot meal. They reinstituted indentured servitude and convinced us it was a premium service. So, you look at your neighbor, the one whose house is rotting. He didn't sign the contract. His kids are feral, running wild, learning to scrap and steal. And you look at your house, maintained by the corporate facilities team.
Your lawn is green. Your kid is studying.
But late at night, when the wind blows through the suburbs, you can hear the fence humming, and you can't tell if it's keeping the wolves out or keeping the livestock in. You wonder if you saved your bloodline or if you just domesticated it. But even this absolute surrender to the machine isn't the bottom, because contracts can be broken, companies can merge or go bankrupt, and when a company child becomes a redundant asset during a merger, where do they go? Let me tell you about the liquidation pools. Let me tell you about what happens to the heirs of a bankrupt god. You thought the signature was the end of it, didn't you? You thought that once you handed your children over to the warm, sterile embrace of the conglomerate, you had secured their future. You traded your autonomy for stability, a classic American bargain. But you forgot to read the quarterly earnings report. You forgot that in the business world, nothing is forever, not even the giants. What happens when the god you sold your soul to files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy? Welcome to the liquidation pools. This is the darkest corner of the new economy, the place where the corporate wards go when the money runs out. In the old world, when a company failed, people lost their jobs. They packed a cardboard box, took a plant and a stapler, and walked out to the parking lot. They were unemployed, sure, but they were free. They were still citizens. But your children aren't employees. They are assets. They are capital. And when a company goes under, assets are not set free. Assets are seized by creditors. Assets are frozen. Assets are auctioned off to the highest bidder to satisfy the debt. Imagine the terror of the restructuring notification. It doesn't come with a pink slip. It comes with a lockdown. Your son is at his corporate academy dorm studying applied logistics. Suddenly, the smart locks on the doors engage. The internet cuts out. The screens on the wall flash a generic Hoarding logo. The announcement comes over the PA system. Please remain in your quarters. An ownership audit is in progress. He is now part of a distressed inventory lot. Across the country, in a boardroom that smells of ozone and panic, lawyers are deciding his fate. They are scrolling through spreadsheets filled with thousands of names. They aren't looking at grades or personality or potential. They are looking at maintenance costs versus projected yield. They are bundling human beings like mortgage-backed securities in 2008. We have a lot of 3,000 entry-level engineers in the Midwest sector, a lawyer says, rubbing his tired eyes. High upkeep, low immediate return. Let's package them with the Class A real estate in Chicago, a sweetener for the buyer. And the liberal arts candidates, another asks, write them off. Toxic assets, dump them.
This is the visceral nightmare of commodification. Your child sits in that room for days, waiting to see who buys the contract,
waiting to see if they will be acquired by a tech firm, a factory farming conglomerate, or something worse. And the worst is out there. We call them the vulture funds. These are private equity firms that specialize in buying human debt for pennies on the dollar. They don't want to implore your children. They want to extract the remaining value and discard the husk. If your daughter gets sold to a vulture fund, the uniform changes. The shiny campus is gone. She is relocated to a high-yield zone. Maybe it's a reclamation site in the Nevada desert. Maybe it's a data mining farm in a converted prison. The amenities are gone, the healthcare is gone, the hope is gone. The contract she lives under now is stripped of all protections. It is raw labor extraction. She works 16 hours a day to pay off the acquisition fee the new owners paid for her. She is paying for the privilege of being sold. And you, the parent who signed the original deal, you can't do a damn thing. You try to call the original company, but the number is disconnected. The website is a 404 error. The legal entity you trusted with your bloodline has evaporated into the mist of corporate jurisprudence. You are shouting at a ghost. You watch the news tickers. You see the headlines. MacroCorp merges with Omni Global. Redundancies expected. Redundancies. That's the polite word. But let's look at what it really looks like on the ground. It looks like a convoy of unmarked buses pulling up to a corporate housing block at 3 a.m. It looks like security contractors with face masks and zip ties. It looks like a sorting process. The keepers get new badges. The discards get evicted. But eviction for a corporate ward isn't just being kicked out of an apartment. It is being delisted. When you are delisted, your credit score, your identification, your very status as a legal entity is wiped. You were an asset of the corporation, and the corporation decided you had zero value. Therefore, you are zero. You are dumped onto the street with nothing. No resume, no history, no inheritance. You are a non-person. We see them gathering under the overpasses now, the glitch towns. Entire encampments of brilliant, educated, highly trained young people who were liquidated during a merger. Coders, biologists, architects. They are huddled around barrel fires, burning their worthless diplomas to stay warm. They speak a strange dialect of corporate jargon mixed with survivalist slang. They barter their skills for food. A former surgeon stitches up a wound in exchange for a can of beans. A structural engineer reinforces a tent for a bottle of water. This is the brain drain made manifest. A generation of talent discarded because the balance sheet didn't align. And the most intense, gut-wrenching part? The shame.
They don't call home. They don't want you to see them like this. You sold them to give them a better life, and they ended up as industrial waste. So, they ghost you. They vanish into the cracks of the city. You sit on your porch, staring at your phone, praying for a notification that never comes. You wonder if your son was part of the premium package that went to Google, or the distressed bundle that went to the lithium mines. You don't know. The NDA prevents them from telling you.
The proprietary nature of the transaction keeps the ledger closed. You realize then that the legacy ban didn't destroy wealth, it just centralized it. It took the chaotic, messy, beautiful web of family inheritance and replaced it with the cold efficiency of the supply chain. And the supply chain has no mercy. The supply chain does not love. The supply chain only optimizes. And right now, the algorithm is calculating that the most efficient thing to do with 1 million surplus human beings is to simply let them expire. But in the darkness of the glitch towns, something is happening. The discarded are organizing. They aren't just surviving, they are hacking. They are taking the skills the corporations gave them, the coding, the engineering, the systems analysis, and they are turning them against the masters. They are building a new kind of ledger, a decentralized, unkillable record of who owns what, a ghost chain. And they aren't looking for money, they are looking for revenge. Let's talk about the counter-economy. Let's talk about the revenge of the written off. Because when you treat people like bad code, eventually they start to function like a virus. You think the end of the world sounds like an explosion? Like a bomb going off? No. The end of the world sounds like a fan whirring. It sounds like 1 million keyboards clicking in the dark. It sounds like the quiet, rhythmic breathing of people who have absolutely nothing left to lose. We talked about the glitch towns. We talked about the discarded children of the corporate bankruptcies huddled under the overpasses. But I didn't tell you what they were doing down there. I didn't tell you about the wires running from the streetlights, bypassed and spliced, snaking into tents lined with aluminum foil. They aren't just trying to stay warm. They are building a weapon. See, the corporations made a fatal calculation error. They assumed that when they liquidated a human asset, when they stripped a young coder or a systems architect of their ID and kicked them to the curb, that the asset would just fade away. They thought poverty would make them stupid. They thought hunger would make them forget Python and C++. But hunger clarifies things. It sharpens the mind. And when you take a generation of kids who were raised to be the perfect gears in a machine, and you throw them into the scrap heap, they don't rust. They start taking the machine apart from the outside in. Welcome to the era of the ghost chain.
It started small. A few altered credit scores here. Erased criminal record there. But these kids, these non-persons, they realized that the entire legacy ban system, the whole terrifying apparatus of asset seizure and life audit algorithms relies on one thing. The system only works if it knows exactly who owns what, who is dying when, and where the money is. So, the glitch towns decided to poison the well. They built a decentralized, invisible ledger, the ghost chain.
It doesn't run on server farms in clean, air-conditioned buildings. It runs on a mesh network of scavenged laptops, stolen smartphones, and cracked gaming consoles, all daisy-chained together across the Rust Belt. It lives in the spaces between the signals. And they aren't using it to steal money. Stealing money is pointless when the money is tracked. No, they are using it to inject noise. Imagine you're a mid-level bureaucrat at the Department of Reclamation. You're staring at your screen, waiting for the death alert on a billionaire in the Hamptons so you can seize his estate. The alert comes through, but then another one comes through, and another, and 10,000 more. According to the system, the billionaire didn't just die. He died, came back to life, transferred his assets to a cat, died again, and then liquidated his portfolio into a currency that doesn't exist. The algorithm chokes, the logic breaks. The seizure order freezes because the AI can't resolve the contradiction. This is the data fog, and it is rolling across America like a storm front. The visceral reality of this warfare is dirty and physical. You see these kids in the rain digging up fiber optic cables with garden trowels. They aren't hackers in hoodies sitting in ergonomic chairs. They are muddy, shivering, malnourished soldiers splicing glass lines with bare, bleeding fingers. They are hardwiring chaos into the backbone of the internet. They are injecting phantom assets. Suddenly, a struggling mechanic in Detroit wakes up to find his bank account shows a balance of negative $3 billion, then positive $4 trillion, then a string of emojis. His debt is erased, not because he paid it, but because the concept of debt has become mathematically impossible for the bank to calculate. The algorithm chokes, the logic breaks. The seizure order freezes because the AI can't resolve the contradiction. This is the data fog, and it is rolling across America like a storm front. The visceral reality of this warfare is dirty and physical. You see these kids in the rain digging up fiber optic cables with garden trowels. They aren't hackers in hoodies sitting in ergonomic chairs. They are muddy, shivering, malnourished soldiers splicing glass lines with bare, bleeding fingers. They are hardwiring chaos into the backbone of the internet. They are injecting phantom assets. Suddenly, a struggling mechanic in Detroit wakes up to find his bank account shows a balance of negative $3 billion, then positive $4 trillion, then a string of emojis. His debt is erased, not because he paid it, but because the concept of debt has become mathematically impossible for the bank to calculate. This is the data fog, and it is rolling across America like a storm front. The visceral reality of this warfare is dirty and physical. You see these kids in the rain digging up fiber optic cables with garden trowels. They aren't hackers in hoodies sitting in ergonomic chairs. They are muddy, shivering, malnourished soldiers splicing glass lines with bare, bleeding fingers. They are hardwiring chaos into the backbone of the internet. They are injecting phantom assets. Suddenly, a struggling mechanic in Detroit wakes up to find his bank account shows a balance of negative $3 billion. Then positive $4 trillion. Then a string of emojis. His debt is erased, not because he paid it, but because the concept of debt has become mathematically impossible for the bank to calculate. This is the data fog, and it is rolling across America like a storm front. This is asymmetrical warfare. The weak are making the strong blind. But the psychological horror here is the identity disillusion.
The ghost chain doesn't just mess with money. It messes with you. The hackers are creating synthetic people. They are flooding the census data with millions of citizens who don't exist. John Does with perfect credit scores, valid social security numbers, and claims to massive properties. The system can't tell the real humans from the ghosts anymore. You check your own status on the government portal. You type in your name. The screen blinks. Error. Multiple entities found. Are you John Smith, human, or John Smith, ghost? Please verify. How do you verify your humanity to a machine that has been fed a diet of hallucinations? You can't. You are locked out of your own life because the system is too busy chasing phantoms. And the parents? The ones who sold their kids? They are watching this unfold on the news with a sickening mix of terror and pride. You're sitting in your living room watching a report about a massive data breach at the company that bought your son. The reporter is breathless, talking about cyber terrorism. But you know the signature. You recognize the style. You remember your boy showing you how to bypass the school firewall when he was 12. You realize that the chaos destroying your pension fund, the glitch that just unlocked your front door, the code that is burning down the economy, it's a letter from home. It's your legacy coming back to haunt the system that stole it. But there is a cost to this rebellion, a physical cost. The burnout isn't just a metaphor. The neurological strain of interfacing with the ghost chain, of fighting AI security bots in real time using scavenged VR rigs, is frying these kids' brains. They call it the flicker. You see them in the glitch towns, the veterans of the cyber war. They are 22 years old, but they look 50. Their hands shake. They stare at nothing. They have literally given their minds to the network. They are sacrificing their cognitive function to hold the door open for the rest of us. They are burning out their own neurons. They are the new martyrs. And they aren't dying for a flag. They are dying for the Great Reset. The goal isn't to get rich. The goal is to make the ledger so corrupt, so unreliable, so filled with ghosts and lies that the state has to wipe it clean. A global format C.
a return to zero for everyone. If we can't inherit money, they say, then nobody owns anything. If we are zeros, then the billionaires are zeros too. It's the ultimate scorched earth policy, and it's working. But the system isn't going to go down quietly. The state has realized that digital countermeasures aren't enough. You can't code away a physical insurgency. So they are bringing the fight back to the real world. They are deploying the analog squads.
And that, my friends, is where the blood starts to spill. Because when you can't trust the cameras and you can't trust the drones, you have to send men with guns to kick down the doors of the tents. We are about to see the collision of the digital ghost and the iron boot. Get your medical kits ready, because the signal is about to get very, very loud. The signal is weak tonight. Can you hear that? The static isn't coming from the atmosphere. It's coming from the silence where the internet used to be. We celebrated the ghost chain, didn't we? We cheered when the hackers in the tent cities poisoned the well, when they filled the government servers with so much noise that the algorithm choked on its own tongue. We thought we had won a victory for chaos. We thought that if we made the digital world uninhabitable for the taxman, he would pack up his briefcase and go home. But we forgot the oldest rule of power. We forgot that before there was data, there was lead. Before there were audits, there were armies. And when a government realizes it has lost control of the cloud, it doesn't surrender. It descends. Welcome to the analog purge. You're sitting in the dark right now because they cut the grid. Not a glitch, a hard cut. The smart meters on the side of your house, dead. The cell towers looming over the highway, powered down. They flipped the master switch. They turned off the eyes of the world so no one could see what they were about to do. This is the terror of the offline protocol. For the last 20 years, we've relied on the idea that everything is recorded. We thought that cameras were a shield. If the police stepped out of line, if the corporation overreached, there would be a video, there would be a stream, there would be evidence. But tonight, there are no cameras. Tonight, the body cams are left in the chargers. Tonight, the drones are grounded. The state has decided that if the digital ledger is corrupt, they will balance the books with physical erasure. They sent in the analog squads. These aren't the regular police. These aren't the corporate security teams with their non-lethal tasers and liability insurance. These are contractors hired from the darkest corners of the private military sector. They don't carry tablets. They don't have GPS trackers on their uniforms. They carry paper lists, printouts of names and coordinates, and they carry unchipped mechanical firearms that don't leave a digital signature. They are the repo men for the human soul. Imagine the scene in the glitch town under the I-95 overpass.
It's pitch black. The fires have been stamped out. The only light comes from the flares the squads pop as they breach the perimeter. Red, sputtering chemical light. It casts long, dancing shadows against the concrete pilings.
The sound is different, too. There's no electronic whine of drones, just the heavy, wet thud of boots on mud, the rack of a slide, the shouting of human voices undistorted by speakers. On the ground, asset recovery, move. They aren't arresting people. They are reclaiming inventory. The kids, the non-persons who built the ghost chain, they try to fight back. But how do you fight back when your weapon is code and your enemy is a sledgehammer? They try to scramble the squad's comms, but the squad isn't using comms. They are using hand signals and whistles. They are using the brute force of the 20th century to crush the rebellion of the 21st. You see a 19-year-old girl, a genius who wrote a script that erased a bank's debt ledger, getting dragged out of a tent by her hair. She's screaming for help, screaming for someone to record this. But your phone is a brick. You can't stream it. You can't tweet it. You are forced to bear witness with your own naked eyes, and that makes you complicit. The squads move through the camp with terrifying efficiency. They are looking for the nodes. They are smashing the laptops with batons, shattering the hard drives, snapping the fiber optic cables. It is a Luddite frenzy. They are physically beating the knowledge out of the world. But the true horror isn't the violence. It's the silence of the suburbs above. You're up there, aren't you? Peeking through your blinds. You see the red flares down by the river. You hear the screams. And you know exactly what is happening. You know they are rounding up the lost children, the surplus population that dared to hack the inheritance laws. And you don't do a damn thing. In fact, there is a small dark part of you that is relieved. Because the ghost chain was scary. It messed with your retirement account. It threatened the little bit of stability you had left. You wanted the system to change, sure, but you didn't want it to break. You didn't want to live in the anarchy of the glitches. So, you let the analog squads do the dirty work. You let them sanitize the world. You let them drag the glitches away into unmarked vans that run on diesel and don't appear on any traffic cam. Where are they taking them? That's the question that will haunt you when the lights come back on. Rumors are already circulating. They call them recalibration centers. They aren't prisons. Prisons are for citizens. These kids are assets. And when an asset malfunctions, you don't punish it, you fix it. They say they use chemical therapy. They say they use narrative reconstruction. They take the brilliant minds that built the resistance and they scrub them. They wipe the rebellion. They wipe the code.
They turn them into the blank, smiling, minimum wage drones they were originally designed to be. They are lobotomizing the future to preserve the present. The squads are finishing up now. You can hear the engines revving. The vans are heavy, loaded down with the weight of stolen potential. The red flares are dying out, leaving the underpass in darkness again. And then, a miracle, or a curse. The streetlights flicker. A low hum vibrates through the neighborhood. Your refrigerator kicks on. Your router blinks. Connected. The internet is back. You check your phone. The news sites are loading. The bank apps are working. The phantom assets are gone. The crazy numbers are gone. Your credit score is back to exactly what it was yesterday. The system has been restored. The backup was successful. It's like nothing happened. There is no mention of the raid on the news. No mention of the kids dragged away in the dark. The digital world is pristine, clean, and orderly. The ghost chain has been broken. But you saw the red light. You heard the boots. You know that the price of your freshly restored order was the physical erasure of a generation. You sit there in your warm, lit living room. You look at the legacy band tax counter on your screen, ticking away, calculating the cost of your death. It's working perfectly again. The trap is reset. And you realize, with a sinking feeling in your gut, that you are alone. The rebellion is over. The hackers are gone. The smugglers are hiding. The hoarders are afraid. The state proved tonight that it doesn't need the internet to control you. It just needs the dark. And it owns the switch. So pour the last of that beer out. It tastes like ash anyway. We're coming to the end of the line, folks. The fight is over. The system won. But before I sign off, before we drift into that good night, we need to have one final conversation. We need to look at what's left of us in the mirror. We need to talk about what it means to be alive in a world where the only thing you're allowed to keep is your regrets. The sun came up today. Did you notice? It came up at the exact same time the almanac said it would. It shone on the pristine, scrubbed sidewalks where the fires were burning last night. It reflected off the glass towers of the banks that, just 12 hours ago, didn't know if they were insolvent or infinite. The sun came up, and it didn't care. That is the most terrifying thing about the morning after the end of the world. The absolute, brutal indifference of the turning earth. You drank your coffee. You put on your tie or your work boots. You checked your bank app and saw the numbers sitting there, calm and orderly, like tombstones in a well-kept cemetery. You got in your car. You merged onto the highway. You sat in traffic. Everything is back to normal. The system rebooted. The patch was installed. The glitch is gone. And you are still here. You survived the audit. You survived the purge. You kept your head down. You kept your mouth shut. And you kept your asset utilization score in the green. You are a model citizen of the legacy ban era.
Congratulations. You have successfully navigated the minefield of modern existence to arrive at precisely nothing. We have reached the end of the experiment, folks. We asked the question, what happens when you strip the future from the human equation? And now we have the answer. You get the infinite now. Look at the person in the car next to you. Look at their face. They aren't thinking about their kid's inheritance anymore. That dream is dead. It was dragged away in a black van last night. They aren't thinking about building a dynasty. They aren't thinking about leaving a mark. They are thinking about lunch. They are thinking about the next 4 hours. They have been cured of the disease of ambition. We have finally achieved the perfect consumer state. We are no longer builders. We are biological throughput. We earn, we spend, we die. The loop is closed. There is no leakage. There is no overflow into the next generation. It is a closed hydraulic system of human capital. It feels light, doesn't it? Be honest. There is a sick, seductive lightness to it. You don't have to worry about the roof leaking in 20 years because you won't own the roof. You don't have to worry about your family name because names are just temporary identifiers for tax purposes. You don't have to carry the weight of history or the burden of posterity. You are free. You are free in the same way a plastic bag is free when it catches the wind. You have no direction, no mass, no purpose other than to float until you degrade. This is the psychological endgame. It's not the totalitarian boot stamping on your face. It's the soft, comfortable pillow smothering your dreams while you sleep. It's the realization that you are an event, not a monument. But let's look closer at the victory of the state. They won the physical battle. They reclaimed the assets. They secured the ledger. But in doing so, they created something they didn't anticipate. They created the ghost story. You see, you can ban the transfer of money. You can ban the transfer of property. You can even, as we saw last night, ban the transfer of data. You can smash the hard drives and arrest the coders. But you cannot tax a whisper. You cannot foreclose on a memory. Right now, in the break rooms and the schoolyards and the quiet corners of the subways, people are talking. They aren't talking about money. They're talking about what happened. They are talking about the glitch towns. They are talking about the time the bank account showed $4 trillion. They are talking about the girl who erased the debt.
We have reverted to the oldest form of inheritance known to our species, the oral tradition. If we can't leave our children a house, we will leave them a truth. If we can't leave them a portfolio, we will leave them a warning. The narrative is the only asset that doesn't depreciate, and it's the only one the analog squads can't confiscate without killing every single one of us.
So, this is your new job. This is the new American hustle. It's not about accumulation anymore. It's about preservation. You are the keeper of the record. When you sit down for dinner tonight with your family, in that house that you rent from a faceless conglomerate, eating food you bought with credits that expire when you die, you have a choice. You can talk about the weather. You can talk about the sports game. You can pretend the world is normal. Or you can lean in close. You can turn off the smart speaker. You can put your phone in the microwave, and you can tell them the story. Tell them about the time before the ban. Tell them about what it felt like to own something. Tell them about the chaotic, messy, beautiful freedom of the legacy. Tell them about the resistance. Plant the seed. Because the state made a mistake. They assumed that if they took away our wealth, they took away our power. But wealth makes you conservative. Wealth makes you afraid to lose what you have. When you take everything away, when you reduce a population to zero balanced souls, you make them dangerous. You make them fearless. Because a man with nothing to lose is the only man who is truly free to burn it all down. The legacy ban was supposed to save the system. Instead, it guaranteed its eventual destruction. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Because you can't build a civilization on the premise that its citizens are disposable. You can't tell a father that his life serves no purpose beyond his own consumption and expect him to obey the traffic laws forever. The resentment is growing. It's not in the streets, it's in the silence. It's in the way people look at the shiny corporate towers. It's a low-frequency vibration that is going to crack the foundations of this new world. So, settle in. Go to work. Pay your taxes. Smile at the camera. But keep the fire burning in the basement of your mind. Hoard the stories like we used to hoard gold. Smuggle the truth to your children like contraband. This is Divergence Point, the radio station at the end of history, the voice in the static. I'm signing off now. The sun is getting too bright, and the monitors are watching. I'm gonna sit here on the porch and finish this beer. I'm gonna watch the world spin, and I'm going to remember. That's my legacy. That's my inheritance. And now it's yours. Good luck out there. Keep the secret and try to get some sleep. You're going to need it.